Okay, it's 7:02. I guess we could start. Could we get a roll call?
Bill Brown,
Here.
Annie Adams,
Here.
Leonardo Kovas,
Here.
Kara Dudek, here, Cynthia Hoyle, Audrey Ishii,
Present.
Susan Jones,
Present.
Jeff Marino,
Here.
Craig Schonkweiler,
Here.
Nancy Westcott, Morgan White, here. We have a quorum.
Okay, thanks. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda? Everybody okay with that? Could we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Morgan,
I'll second it.
second by Sue. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. The agenda's been approved. Next, we have approval of minutes from the previous meeting. Were there any corrections for the minutes? Not? Could we have a motion?
So moved.
Moved approval by Audrey. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Sue. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Minutes are approved. Thanks. Have any public input tonight? Jason, did you want to say anything tonight? No? Okay.
I have a question for staff. It's an item not on the agenda. Today there was a FedEx truck parked in the bike lane on Main Street, and so I hung out until he came back. And I asked him if he knew that the center lane on Main Street could be used for delivery trucks. And he said, no, I did not know that. They frown on us using those to park while we do deliveries. And so he didn't use it. So there were sort of two questions. One, does law enforcement know they could use it downtown? And two, is there any way we can indicate that for them? Because I remember vividly during the discussion about the road diet and the design that was a topic that we discussed. So I wanted to ask if you can share any information on that with us. If not, maybe we can get some information back at a future point.
Yeah, I have to look into it.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay, we have some unfinished business tonight. Vision Zero Subcommittee has a report and proposed draft resolution. Audrey, were you going to present for that?
I can start it off. Yeah.
Okay.
We know at the last meeting it was moved that the Vision Zero Subcommittee come forth with a draft resolution to be discussed here. One of the issues that has arisen several times is exactly how this action plan would look, what would be involved in creating it, and that's why I've passed out the action plan for Charlotte. Now, why Charlotte, you say? That's not the Midwest. Well, one thing is that Champaign-Urbana is unusually well-resourced in people who do studies and in a wealth of studies that we have and research. And in some ways, we much more resemble Charlotte than we resemble Columbia, Missouri, which actually had to go out and dig statistics for themselves. I don't think that they have a RPC like we do, where we already have a running start on Vision Zero. We already have a CUATS and a number of committees on those things. Charlotte is much more like us in that respect. It has those resources, and for them it was really a matter of pulling it together into the Vision Zero, getting all the stakeholders at the table, but really just compiling what those are. And so I did send a link out to you for the whole Charlotte plan, and I've copied out a few of the primary pages here. And if you have the one-pager, that's actually their flyer, their Vision Zero fact sheet for the public. Now, what they have done is gone way in. They've in their first year, they went to like 25 events. They've made sure that the public is engaged from the beginning. And you can even see on their action plan on the right develop communication strategy is the number one thing that they do. Then they have a communication strategy task force kickoff, start the draft plan. You know, they aren't going to present this draft plan as, here it is, I hope you guys love it. No, they got public input from the beginning. They started with that communication strategy. We here in Urbana have lots of opportunities also to get out before the public, to join tables at whatever public events are going on with the Vision Zero, get people's input. Also, as we've talked about many times before, getting this place hopping with some public input. I mean, this is kind of the public input forum for a lot of the things that Craig brings forth, for example, the plans. And this, we need to have some public to really call it a public input. So that's one thing that Charlotte seems to really have done right, is get that public engagement right from the beginning. And that's just critical. We were, well, I'm sure Cynthia will probably talk more about this, but we and Craig also, and so was Jeff, were at a pedestrian workshop put on by IDOT, and so was Bill, by Fed Highways. And they had some, Grand Rapids in particular, had some fantastic PSAs that they had developed, some small YouTubes that were shown. You know, initially I think they paid for some airtime, but then stations liked it so much they kept showing them, you know, on, and they've just done a remarkable job at bringing awareness to the public. So you know, when you look around, I see all kinds of opportunities for us in that domain as well. So this fact sheet is incredibly simple too. I really like that. It's actually a 2-pager front back. But it's very simple with its message. It's not a bunch of wonky policies and so on. Then they had not done their action plan when they did the fact sheet. The action plan is the 6-page thing I've handed out then. That's just an excerpt from it, but the entire action plan is not incredibly dense. The strategies are pretty simple. They're pulling together a lot of things from a lot of agencies. And, you know, they start off with why Vision Zero. They talk about what Vision Zero is, building safe streets. And then, you know, at every turn they have tried to explain, you know, why we need Vision Zero, what's the data. So if you'll turn to the page next to the end that's got the really simple graphics, the bar charts and the circle charts, kind of pie charts without the middle of the pie. I have some figures for you. Okay, Charlotte is 859,000 people, so whoa, they're much bigger than us. In fact, they're about 20.5 times our population. And yet, so much of what they're doing is totally doable here, and so much of what they've experienced. So let me just give you some figures real fast. If you look at the bottom on the pink and blue barred things, the first one, I want you to write on that pink one. Okay, they had 731 crashes involving a fatality or serious injury. At our workshop, we found out that these are called K or A. K is a fatality or A is a serious injury type crashes. So if you put 1 on the pink and 21, that's the one fatality that Urbana had in 2013. 21 is the A injuries that we had in 2013. And amazingly enough, it comes in very accurate. That particular one is accurate for the proportions shown, because they are 20 times our population. So the 21 is about 100 for them. Okay, the 21 for us. The one fatality is about the, it would actually be 2 fatalities, but we had a good year that year. So it's not quite accurate on the pink. That would be smaller for that year. But the next year, in 2014, then in the blue part, put 43. In the pink part, put 2. So we had 43 serious injuries, 2 fatalities. In 2015, we had 44 and 2. In 2016, we had 32 and 2. And in 2017, we had 36 and 2. So what you realize is we suddenly jumped up a whole lot in the serious injuries. And I'm, looking at that, and I'm actually kind of wondering if there might not be subjectivity in those serious injury numbers, because I've seen, and Bill has been looking at this too, we've seen quite a bit of variance at times. I don't know to what level it might be an individual community decides they went to the hospital, it's a serious injury. I don't know. So we need both. You know, we need the fatalities to kind of truth the serious injuries and the serious injuries to truth the fatalities. What I would say is that Urbana has tons more serious injuries than Charlotte for its size. We had, where it says 731 above this graph, we had 185 serious injuries. That would be 3,792 in Charlotte. So I think there might be something about the serious injuries that is not completely reported the same way, but we don't need to go there, really. What's relevant is there are far too many people who are experiencing life-changing injuries. At the top, then, it's all crashes. That top bar that's all blue, those are all crashes, total crashes, serious and minor, fender benders, rear ends, and so on. So just to give you an idea, it's 543 for 2013, 660 for 2014, 684 for 2015, 658 for 2016, and 641 for 2017. And then if we look at the pie charts, I don't know, they don't cite what year or how they got those commute by modes. I know that Cynthia, as a transportation planner, really
It says
stays
2017.
Oh, okay, it's
Yeah,
2017.
So it's just 2017.
Okay, well, actually, I wonder if that commute by mode is necessarily that, but we'll go with that.
Well, because
That's fine.
it's I think what they're trying to do on the side here is call out the pedestrian and bicycle crashes, whereas everything is shown in the other two graphs.
Right. Okay, so the next one, crashes by mode, we stand at around 2% for bicycles and pedestrians. Okay, and then people killed by mode, over 10 years and even over the 5 years, we're at around 50%, and they show 38%. So what really stands out here is the number of crashes involving pedestrians and bicycles is quite small compared to now bicycles has been actually a huge success story, and that's, you know, we've had very few bicycle fatalities. I think our last one was in 2004, I believe. So we've had very few, but the pedestrian fatalities is really terrible, really a scam.
Audrey?
Yes.
Just real fast. One thing that really stood out to me when I saw this before was the 121,000 crashes that occurred between 2013 and 2017 in Charlotte, North Carolina. I just thought, what an incredible expense of capital and assets for that community. I mean, how much money in first responders and in police, you know, just from first responders to police officers to, you know, the hospitals to cars, like how much money does that represent of just like wasted time and energy? And I think that's just like a really important thing just to keep in front of us as we do this, is to think about in the city of Urbana, as we begin to lower these crash rates, just what a cost savings it's going to be all around, and frankly, a mental and emotional savings.
I think there are some people who have done some work on calculating what the actual costs of crashes and fatalities are. And of course, you know, that they're going to have to do it on a large scale. They can't do it by community, and costs, of course, you know, vary dramatically between California and Champaign-Urbana. But it would be possible for us to say, here's what this research says about what this costs nationally to communities, and it's something that we don't look at and quantify. That I think it would be helpful for us to at least think about what that actually means in terms of how much it costs, both in terms of public dollars and private dollars.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I even wonder if insurance companies would help fund Vision Zero efforts. And we have a State Farm Research Center at the research park. Maybe it's worth trying to reach out to some insurance contacts, see if we could get some kind of funding for advertisements or something.
Okay, well, I do have the full report pulled up on the computer, but I don't know if we need to look at that right now or look at it if we have questions as we go on, or if we should just go ahead and look at the resolution now and discuss it.
I don't feel like we're ready to talk about how we want to put the report together. I feel like if we decide that we want to, go forward with this, then we could talk about, well, what would we want in our report? What would we want it to look like? I guess I feel like until we decide we want to do it, it's hard for us to say how we want to put a report together. And we could look at a number, maybe the Vision Zero committee or another group can go through and take a look at other people's reports and come back to us with some recommendations for what they think might be useful for us. So I think our time would be better spent here looking at the resolution. Yeah.
I did last meeting offer to look at our open data on the Urbana portal and see what kind of statistics and things we can get off of that. And I did a little bit of that. So if you want a few minutes to read over the resolution and make some notes, I'll go ahead and bring up that report, and you can kind of work while I'm showing you that too.
Do you want to go through the resolution, Audrey, or do you want me to?
You can go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we drafted this using feedback that you all had given us and other resolutions that we thought looked good. And so I guess I'll just read it since the public can't see what we're discussing here. So it says, whereas the City of Urbana Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission was established on June 16th, 2006, and is authorized under Urbana City Code, Chapter 23, Article 11, Section 23-146 and through 23-150. And whereas the duties of the commission include advising City Council on how to make bicycling and walking viable and safe modes of transportation in the City of Urbana, performing evaluations and recommending action plans for biking and walking facilities, developing education and public outreach opportunities on bicycle and pedestrian issues, and assisting the city in the development of bicycle and pedestrian systems with the community specifically. And whereas the City of Urbana aspires to reduce the number of fatal and serious injury crashes on its streets to zero, and whereas the most current long-range transportation plan report card indicates worsening traffic crash statistics for the metropolitan planning area in recent years, and with Urbana city limits, including the University of Illinois, having 10 pedestrian and 1 bike death of 20 total traffic fatalities in the last 10 years of data from 2008 to 2017, compared to 4 pedestrian deaths of the 12 total traffic fatalities recorded in the 10 years previous to that, that being 1998 to 2007. And whereas the City of Urbana supports and encourages the efforts by our regional, state, and federal partner agencies to prioritize safety improvements for people walking, bicycling, and using mobility devices to eliminate deaths and serious injuries on our entire transportation network, including public mass transit and motor vehicle transportation. And whereas Vision Zero is a traffic safety policy that takes a systems approach to achieving safety for all road users that has been adopted in more than 30 U.S. cities and in countries throughout the world. And whereas the City of Urbana departments, including Public Works, Police, and Fire, are actively employing programs to improve safety and response time. And whereas Vision Zero builds on those existing programs to help meet the Council's adopted performance measure to achieve a reduction in the number of fatal and serious injury crashes to zero. And whereas the City of Urbana has adopted the 2016 Bicycle Master Plan, which includes the stated goal of becoming a Vision Zero city, and is in the process of developing a pedestrian master plan. And whereas the Urbana Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission now finds that a recommendation for a Vision Zero resolution should be submitted to the City Council for adoption. Now therefore be it resolved by the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission of the City of Urbana, Illinois, as follows. Section 1. The City of Urbana should set as official policy the Vision Zero goal of 0 fatalities or serious injuries in our transportation system by 2030. Whereas the City Council should direct the City Administrator and staff to initiate the formation of the Vision Zero Task Force to develop the Urbana Vision Zero strategy and plan. The Vision Zero Task Force shall include, but not be limited to, representatives of the public, urban, human relations, Urbana Public Relations, Traffic and Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commissions, Urbana Police and Fire Departments, Champaign-Urbana Public Health District, Urbana School District 116, Urbana Park District, Champaign County Regional Planning Commission, University of Illinois, People Assuming Control of Their Environment, which is PACE, CUMTD, IDOT, Suppliers of Driver Education, local safety education and advocacy groups, including Safe Routes to School and Champaign County Bikes. Section 3. By such adoption, the City Council should resolve that in future decision-making by the City Council on matters which may have an impact on the built infrastructure, the City will take into consideration the Vision Zero Task Force analysis and resulting, I should say analyses, and resulting strategic plan whenever economically reasonable and appropriate. And then it's got a place for pass by with date. So we are looking for feedback from you if there are things that you think that we should change, add, etc.
I have some questions. On the third whereas from the bottom on the first page, isn't community development also involved in actively employing programs to improve safety and response time?
Yes, because they do code enforcement. And so I think that that is...
it's called community development now, right?
Yes, yeah. and they, for example, are, work on the snow removal, so that would be directly connected to pedestrian safety. You are correct.
My next question is, I know that the council has adopted a performance measure, but that was called adopted performance measure. This is the next, the second to the bottom. Builds upon those existing programs to help meet the council's adopted performance measure to achieve a reduction. Is it a?
I think that's a performance measure you want the council to adopt as part of Vision Zero.
More than likely.
So it would say would build upon.
Okay.
Isn't that what we would want to say there?
I thought this was saying whereas there's already a goal to increase, reduce.
Yeah. So we would say would build upon.
Okay.
Right?
Let me just, it's okay to go ahead and do these, what I found on Urbana stuff and let people look at the resolution for a few minutes while I do that.
Sure, but she had one more question.
Okay.
Well, no, we can stop. I have more than one.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Okay. So if you haven't looked at the City of Urbana open data site before, now, this is just data published by Urbana, so it's not Regional Planning Commission or anything. It's police data. There's other stuff on here, some financial data too, but you just go to data.urbana.illinois.us and it should come up with a bunch of different data sets. And these are in police. There's a terms of use thing you agree to. So the two I used were police incidents since 1988. That's basically an incident number for any time the police are called out and they end up making a report on it. So it doesn't could be traffic, could be other stuff. And then there's police arrests since 1988. And both of those data sets have an incident number in them. So you can join them to find out what incidents that involved accidents, bicycles, pedestrians, also resulted in arrests, and then you can get a little bit of demographics on the person that was arrested. So that was what you wanted me to try, or wanted me to ask staff to do, but I did it. And this is just Urbana's data, so I don't know if Regional Planning Commission has an open data portal. They have some kind of data on there, but
Yes, they do have an open data portal. I know Kuwat's does. I don't know about the Sheriff's Department, for example, in terms
So-
of crash data.
so this just applies to Urbana. I'll show you a few things that I did. So by joining those, I could come up, we were interested in the people that were getting ticketed. Total, this is a 10-year, almost 19-year period from 2001 through June of this year. That's one nice thing, is it's updated every month pretty much, so you can get pretty recent data. And I just pulled out the ones that had injuries. And this isn't type A injuries, it's differently defined. I think I've seen a definition of type A injuries where it's incapacitating. Usually they have to go to the hospital, or at least they can't just walk away from it very easily. But these are any injuries, so there's probably going to be more of them. So this is 512 incidents with injuries involving pedestrians or bicycles over that almost, say, 20-year period. 278 of them were pedestrian, 225 were bicycle, and 9 were bike-ped crashes. Out of that 512, roughly half, 254, were ticketed. So somebody was at fault. A lot of bicycle accidents with injuries are single bike accidents. I'm not sure about pedestrians. I suppose you can trip, but it's I don't know why there wouldn't be more wouldn't be more tickets written, but that's the question we might look into. Of those 254 incidents that were ticketed, there were 332 tickets. So some incidents result in more than one ticket. About 80% of them resulted in one ticket. About 20% resulted in more than one ticket. One of them resulted in 8 tickets. So I have a separate tab with those on it. How come it's not working? Oh. It's asleep. There. So the one with 8 incidents, this is just an example, is driving under the influence, resisting, obstructing police, operating uninsured vehicle, leaving scene of accident, cannabis possession, driving under revoked license, improper backing, and resisting causing harm to police officer. So that's all one incident. So that's the kind of data that's available there.
And that was just a pedestrian?
That was a pedestrian accident, or a pedestrian crash, yeah.
And it was a bike?
That was a pedestrian car, pedestrian vehicle, and the person with the 8 tickets or 8 infractions was the vehicle driver. So just kind of a summary of some of the stuff you could pull out about the people that were ticketed. Of the 332 tickets, about half were from Urbana, and that corresponds pretty closely to what we've seen in other traffic data we've looked at with the IDOT study. We've been doing at council for years, looking at racial disparities and things like that. So about half the people driving on our streets are Urbana residents, basically. And that seems to, there's nothing really surprising there. About 25% from Champaign, and the rest were from different towns. This is all the towns that had more than one. And then there were another 25 towns that just had one over that 20-year period. Racially, pretty similar to what you'd expect. Pretty much reflects the racial makeup of the area. The types of violations, and these were the most detailed part. There's like there's one column called violations. There's crime categories and other things like that. But this violation seemed to have the most detail, but it also was kind of the most inconsistent. I think the officer just kind of writes something down and then it gets translated. So sometimes it'll say failure to yield to pedestrian, and then here's failed to yield to pedestrian again, but it's spelled a little fail instead of failure, so it comes up in a little different spot. But basically, that's the biggest one. A car hits a pedestrian, and it was the car's fault. They didn't yield. Operate uninsured motor vehicle, that's typically like an additional one that gets tacked on. Failure to reduce speed, failure to yield. I highlighted some of the ones that I saw that looked like they were faulting pedestrians or bicyclists. There are some of those. But really the majority are vehicle. Some no lamps on bike, step in front of moving vehicle, not crossing at crosswalk.
That's very interesting because there is a tendency on the part of the media and others to focus on pedestrian and bicyclist behavior, but it's clear from this data that, as we have been saying, the real problem is with driver behavior.
I think that's probably accurate, yeah. So I think, are there any questions about what we might use that for, or anything?
Bill, are you just inferring who got the ticket based on what it's for, or does it tell you somewhere who got the ticket?
It doesn't. It's
Okay.
I mean, it has the demographics. It doesn't say this person was driving a car.
The numbers are there,
Failure
though,
to yield
in
to
that
pedestrian pretty much has to be somebody driving a vehicle, right? So, yeah. So the answer is yes. I'm inferring by this.
Well, there
violation
is the
description.
column with the numbers of such tickets, very few, right next to it.
Right, but
Yeah.
but if you had like improper lane usage, could be a bicyclist
That's true.
going the wrong way, right, on a street, but something like that, we don't know that that's a
Yeah.
vehicle driver.
Does it say anything about the type of vehicle?
I don't think it did in this one.
But don't they have to check on the report?
They do specify on the traffic report.
Yeah, they have to
Yeah.
specify
Yeah.
who, it can't be unclear as to who was involved. They have to say,
Yeah, I mean,
vehicle.
this is the database. This isn't
Mhm.
everything that was in the report. This is what
mm-hmm.
they put in the database. And there should be, I know for the data we get for the traffic stops, they have vehicle types. So there might be another data set I could link to this using that, if that has the incident code in it.
The other thing that we know is that the majority of crashes are vehicle on vehicle, and the number of injuries, and I think that as we work on this, that data we also need to be including here, because they are by far the people who are most often killed
Yeah,
and injured.
and that's the Vision Zero. Vision Zero covers everything, and that's probably
Yes.
also going to be one of the biggest
Yes.
interests of the insurance companies.
Yes, yeah.
But so I was trying to figure. So 500. Let's see. Yeah, 500 incidents involving injury over 20 years is what 25 a year injuries, but there aren't that many serious injuries for pedestrians and cyclists a year, are there?
Looking at our bar chart.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I think I
I'd
might
have
have
to-
that too. actually.
Yeah, oh, sorry, I'd have to add that up. Yeah, the data exists, but
Oh, that's a different one. Here, I think I have it. Oh, this is for all crashes, so. Yeah, this is the type A injury crashes for Champaign-Urbana and the whole area, but that's for all crashes. Yeah, so all crashes, the serious injuries were less than 50, so yeah, the bicycle pedestrian injuries in this data that's on the open data port is all injuries, so it's not just serious injuries.
yeah, we only have something in the low teens each
Yeah.
year of crashes at all involving bikes and pedestrians. Well, bikes about low teens, and pedestrians, low teens. They're about equal.
Okay, so let's
Bill?
get back to the discussion of the resolution. If there's no other questions
I
on
have one.
this. Oh.
On that one you just closed, was there a fatalities graph too?
You know, I did pull out, I didn't do a lot of work with fatalities because there's a low number and it's hard to get a lot of information out of that. But what I did do was,
Yeah, we do know that the fatalities rate basically doubled. It was 12 for the 10 years prior to the most recent 10 years, which have been 20.
Yeah, if you clump it by 10 years.
Yeah.
But we have the LRTP report card, Craig, goes back to 1978.
Right.
Well,
So
and
we
I
have
actually-
data going all the way from there until now.
Right.
this
And I
is-
have passed out the fatalities from
she's got it.
1980. Everyone
Right,
has a
right.
sheet in front of them with
Yeah.
those fatalities from the LRTP.
This
One
is,
thing that's, sorry, go ahead.
and I can send this out. This is actually a link to every News Gazette story on every fatality in Urbana since 2006. So there was one in 2006, one in 2007, one in 2008, one in 2010, and so on. There were 2 in 2015, 2 in 2016. So this is all only pedestrian and bicycle fatalities again. And then there was one on campus that didn't show up in our data set for Urbana. And I guess it's because it was an MTD bus and maybe U of I police handled it. It was the one on North Goodwin that you might remember from 2004 or 5. It was a turning bus that killed a pedestrian there. And that wasn't in our police data set, so I don't know if U of I police handled it and it just wasn't in ours or what. But yeah, there was one cyclist fatality in 2009. The rest of these were pedestrians. So if you're interested in, the details behind, a particular death or in general, how deaths have occurred over the years, I'll send this out and you can, or maybe we could even put it on our website. I don't know if that's too gross or not. I don't know.
I'd like to receive the data. I think we need to be careful a little bit, though, that a news article doesn't give you all of the details.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
So,
And they're also selective in what they cover. First, you have to die, unless you were hit by a DUI. Then that's
these are
big
just-
news, too.
And
but-
how I did this was I found the deaths in the Urbana data and then just did a search on the News Gazette site with like a 1-week period after the death to try to find out a little bit more about it. And it does, it gives you a little bit of at least impression of, and it might jog your memory, because sometimes there were 2 or 3 articles, follow-up articles about the death, and I just picked the first one. But a lot of people on this commission anyway have been in town a long time and probably remember every single one of these because they're, they stand out. But
so,
this,
so you're saying that the last cyclist fatality was in
in
2000
Urbana, it was 2009. That was a guy that was on the sidewalk along Main Street, and then he came up on 2
Yeah.
pedestrians. He jumped the curb out into the street, and he was hit from behind.
And he was quite DUI.
And I
I
think
thought
he
that was on
DUI.
green, but it's on.
It was on green,
Was it?
yes,
Yeah.
and it was right after the
Green,
bars
yeah.
closed. The cyclist, the driver, and the pedestrians were all inebriated.
Okay.
So the police, getting a straight story there as to what actually occurred was difficult.
I'd like, while we're on the topic of fatalities, on that page that I passed out, the single-page report card, although it's not plotted, and you can see from the plots that Bill did, an unsmooth plot is a little hard to read because it's jagged. It goes up, it goes down with what's happening. And LRTP does have a variety of trend plots that use rolling averages to help smooth that out. But there is a very striking, basically step plot, what we call, from the previous 10 years to the recent 10 years. If you'll look at 2008 to 2017, Urbana, that's 10 years. And you can see there's deaths every year. I mean, it's a pretty terrible sight. If you look at 1998 to 2007, there's some 3s there, but actually it adds up to 12. It was much fewer than the 20 that were in the recent years. There's also many, many zeros if you go back to 1993. Before that, it's clear there was a lack of awareness or something. There was a lot of fatalities before 1993. It looks as though 1991 and 1994 and 4, somebody said that's enough. something happened, and we got it down for quite a number of years, and then it's crept up again. Really, 2007. I mean, that's including that 2007 in the previous period.
Yeah, on the chart, you see it really went up in 2007, 2008. There was a decline in overall crashes during the recession, and then it started peaking back up. But we did have a peak in 2007, 2008.
And there's a complication there that you can see starting in 1999. They started including statistics of Savoy, Bonneville, Tolono into the urbanized area, and that's a little mysterious.
No, it's the Census Bureau dictates the boundaries.
It's mysterious anyway, even if it's the
Well,
Census
yes,
Bureau.
yes, but it's not something we have any control
Yeah,
over.
Savoy, Bonneville, and
They do
Tolono
it
are
based on
considered.
population and density and commute patterns. There actually is a formula that you can go and look at if you want to really geek out as to how they do that. But we just have to respond to the boundaries that they give us for that.
I would assume that maybe those are commuter communities that commute into Champaign-Urbana, and that's why they're part of our Champaign-Urbana
Right, and it
urbanized area.
depends on the boundaries and population growth and, yeah. And job
But,
locations.
and again, as we talked about last week and the week before, or last month and the month before, Urbana's out of proportion compared to Champaign, unfortunately.
So do we want to go back to Morgan's questions?
Yeah.
So I was asking, I think for on the first page of the resolution, of the draft resolution, the second to the bottom whereas, it refers to an adopted goal. Does the city have an adopted goal to reduce fatal and serious injuries, whether it's goal or objective or?
Yeah, when they
plan?
adopted the bicycle master plan, they adopted the language that said we aspire to be a Vision Zero city. They also had it in the 2014 mayor council goals to be a Vision Zero city. I don't know that that can be considered adopted per se. It was in the council goals. We have a different mayor and a different council now.
But I don't think we had an adopted performance measure to achieve a reduction in the number of fatal and serious injury crashes to zero. I think that's the question you're asking.
Yeah, but it sounds like if the mayor and council goals from, what year was that?
2014.
From 2014, set that as a goal. You're just saying you don't know if that's currently official. I'm
I can
curious
speak
about
to that.
Yeah.
It's not current at this time. The new goals that were set in 2018, there were 6 priority goals, and Vision Zero is not included. It was previously
safety?
in there. No, they're very specific goals. I can read them here. They're, priority number 1 was the transformation of the Lincoln Square site as a destination. I mean, I'm sure Bill knows these well. Priority number 2 was increased minority participation in security, city procurement. There's a lot of other things with that. Priority number 3 was achieve equity in traffic stops and reduce the disparity impact of court fines on lower income people. Priority number 4 was expand connectivity of the KRT with a focus between Vine and Lincoln, and a plan for the Boneyard Creek multi-use path. Priority number 5 was invest in and repurpose older housing stock. And then the last priority, number 6, was make Southeast Urbana an economic priority with an emphasis on the Philo Road Business District. The reason that I'm mentioning that is, yes, it is correct that the previous city council, the Vision Zero was in there, and that's how it rolled into the bike master plan at that time. Since that time, though, there is a new council seated, and Bill can maybe speak to this, but now there's 6 priorities that are very specific that are directing staff resources. Just wanna be clear.
Well, what I would suggest is we reword this to say, whereas Vision Zero would build upon those existing programs, it would help to meet the council's adopted performance measures to achieve, so that we would be saying that, I think what we're trying to say here is, we've already got existing programs that would help meet our,
I would suggest if it's not currently a goal, and that, because what you're suggesting, Cynthia, it sounds to me like things that are actually stated elsewhere, that maybe we just strike this one.
well, we could do that.
Or we could suggest they adopt that performance measure.
Yes, we
But
could.
the whereases are, then it would move, it wouldn't be one of the whereases, it would be in the end.
Yeah, okay.
So I
Yeah, I'm
suggest,
comfortable. I'd have to check exactly in the bike master plan to see what the language for Vision Zero is, but if there's a goal there, that was an adopted plan, so I'm comfortable leaving that in.
Well, I know
Even though it isn't currently, I mean, the city council goals changed drastically with the new mayor. We used to have 12 pages with 5 or 10 goals on each page, and she wanted it to really be reduced to just some things to concentrate on. So I think the goal actually was to have 4 goals, and by the time we got done, we had 8. So yeah, so it's different. But
Well, I don't think that things that aren't in their goals just end, such as the public arts program
Yeah,
doesn't seem to
no,
be in their
and it's in
goals.
the
Did
bike
we end
master
it
plan, and
because
that's
it's
been
not in their
adopted.
goals? You
Yeah.
know,
it's just not a current goal. So, but yeah,
because the very next one says it's a stated goal in the bike master plan.
Yes.
Yeah, I have the bike master plan up right now. It looks like it's in here about 10 times. I just did Control F, so.
Well, I'd also mention that Charlotte actually got started before they had it as a specified proclamation. If you look at it, they built first, and then they did the action plan. They actually amazingly hadn't set it in advance. They had it stated similar to our bike plan. In other words, it was somewhere, but it wasn't like this big rollout until they had done their communication strategy and
guess
so on.
one thing you might add is Illinois is a Vision Zero state, right?
Well,
toward.
they have a safety plan, and yes, they have a stated goal of achieving Vision Zero, but they don't have a separate Vision Zero plan. So, yeah, kind of getting down into the weeds.
But maybe this one about the council's adopted measures could be replaced with one about Illinois has a plan with a stated goal to write
at
up
least it
strategy.
has stated goal,
Well,
if it doesn't have a plan.
I think that we would be asking the council to adopt such a goal. If you look at Section 1 on the Now There It Be Resolved, Section 1, the city of Urbana should set as official policy the Vision Zero goal of 0 fatalities or serious injuries. That would be the performance measure.
Right.
So do we take it out from the whereas?
Yeah, I think we could take that one out, because it sounds like it's confusing.
Or you could, could you just strike so where it says, so I'll just read it. Whereas Vision Zero builds upon those existing programs to help meet the reduction in the number of fatality and serious injury crashes to 0. Meaning you're striking out
Yeah,
the council, the
Yeah,
specific
we could do
part.
that.
Yeah.
Yes.
just strike out everything, just strike out meet the council's adopted performance measure to achieve,
Right.
something like that.
Because that's still a
help-
goal
To
that you
help
want.
Help achieve.
Sorry, to help achieve a reduction.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Here,
It's a little
here.
bit more generalized, but it's what we're talking about, trying to get to.
But I think it's also good to to add the one about the state of Illinois. So it's just another whereas.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Says we're, being consistent.
Okay, I had a couple other questions. In section 2 on the back, of our resolution, we say develop, just the second line says to develop the Urbana Vision Zero strategy and plan. But then in section 3, we say take into consideration the analysis and resulting strategic plan. I'd like those words to match. Like, if we're going to ask them to develop a Urbana Vision Zero strategy and plan, then at the end, I'd like it to say, take into consideration the Urbana
I
Vision
got you.
Zero strategy and plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
And resulting Vision Zero. Yeah.
Or to make the top one. Or to make the top one strategic plan, too. Just
I
make
like
them-
Vision Zero strategy and plan. I think it's more, I think we need to have it in there.
I think that resolutions should not include the phrase shall. I think it should say should, because we're resolving they should do this. So how do
Where does
you
it
resolve
say-
that they shall do this? We don't have that. So in the section 2.
So take the word resolve out.
No, section 2 on the third line, the Vision Zero task force, instead of shall include, we should say should include.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay.
Okay, I could stop there.
I don't see that the state of Illinois has a Vision Zero plan.
They don't have a plan, but they have a goal. That's what I was trying to
Okay, let
say.
me
It's
see.
confusing.
All right.
They have, what, it's called a safety
It's-
plan?
Well, I thought it was Road to Zero.
Road to zero.
There we go.
There's also toward zero deaths.
Yes,
Sure
maybe
which
that's
one
it.
I'm not
Road-
sure which
it
one
Road
it
to
is.
Zero?
There's also, there's both.
There's
Both
both,
exist.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Toward zero deaths and road to zero.
So I have some questions and some concerns. And it primarily centers around Section 2. I think for this plan to be successful, staff has to be integrally involved with this plan. My concern is, and I've said this several times, we are in a different climate now where staff has zero bandwidth to take anything on. Section 2 is problematic from the vantage point that when I look at my workload and my staff's workload in the engineering division, and I cannot speak to other departments, we just do not have any bandwidth at this time. Our efforts have been directed towards those council and mayor priority goals. And then we also have other things that we're working on diligently, which is, say, the Lincoln and Springfield project, the MCOR project, doing other parts of the master plan, like, we looked at the drainage grates, and, we're trying to develop a plan that we can then start, repairing those starting next year and things like that. So I'm just trying to be straight here that Section 2 is of concern on the staffing side. We've discussed it internally, and I've sought some direction. And, I could sugarcoat this and tell you folks everything will be fine, but it's very problematic for staff at this time. So I would ask for the removal of Section 2. If it stays, then I'll have to vote no.
So let me ask you a question. So if we take Section 2 out, do you think we're more likely to get the resolution passed through City Council?
I think your odds are significantly higher. And I think that we all want zero fatalities. We all want a reduction in injuries. There are strategies to get to that. One strategy would be to try to get the plan adopted, and then you begin to work towards, so you're making one leap, and then maybe when we get out of our structural deficit, which we're right kind of on the halfway point of, you know, we could then begin to really dive into it. Too, I'm not asking that it be postponed. I'm just telling you the reality of what we are dealing with.
And I understand that reality, and in fact, I have expressed my concern to several city council members that I think we're moving too aggressively to eliminate the structural deficit. It took us decades to get here, and I think the short time period that has been set for reducing it is causing real difficulties in our community and getting the work done that needs to be done, and that we're losing staff, valuable staff. Apart from that, I'm wondering if in Section 2 what we could say is that the City Council should, I'm wondering if what we can say is that we would like for them to look at how we could develop the plan.
So you could say, instead of direct, you could say, just throwing out a word, explore
Okay.
the formation of.
I wonder if we should say we should identify how we could initiate the formation of, and use a term that still takes action moving forward, but that isn't as definitive in terms of sort of identifying action.
I wonder if we could recommend a smaller committee to actually develop the Vision Zero strategy and plan, and then involve the other groups once we have a draft and get feedback from the other groups.
Well, maybe what we could do is that we
I'd be
should.
worried about that.
Yeah,
I'd be
me
worried
too.
about developing it without the direct interaction with the staff could lead to
Well,
wasted effort
what I'm saying is,
and-
you know, Champaign-Urbana Public Health District, Urbana School District.
Maybe what we should do is say that the City Council should explore funding options for developing a Vision Zero plan, task force and plan, and then, as you said, we could talk to State Farm, we can talk to Public Health, we could talk to IDOT. Maybe, based on the information from our workshop, I'm wondering if we could apply for safety funding to do a plan. That would be an option. And so then if we had funding that we can then, pay to bring in whatever support we need, because it sounds like our staff are not going to be able to spend the time to do it.
So what about, when do the city priorities get updated? Is it every 2 years, every 4 years, or whenever people feel like it? And is there a set
It was
schedule?
every 2 years. I think it might be every 4. I'm not sure, actually.
Isn't it after a new council is seated typically?
Yeah, so that would be every 4,
Every 4.
Every 4 years?
because we're all elected.
The last set of goals were 2014 to 17, and then this one is 2018 to 21.
It's 21.
So does that mean it goes through 21, Bill?
Yeah, the next election, the next council would be seated May 1st to 21.
Okay.
Well, and if we look at that Charlotte plan, we've got the developed communication strategy comes first before the task force kickoff. I think we've talked several times about the need to communicate. And,
I feel strongly that whatever we do, we should do it very well to have success. And partial efforts, it doesn't work very well.
well, I feel like we can leverage.
And
some of it.
yet we can get the momentum going. I'm fearful that if we kind of push everything to a corner and we say, well, this is what we want, then it's just not going to happen. I don't know if Bill's got a read on that with his fellow council members, but I can just tell you, I'm just being honest. Staff-wise, we are we're not in a position to absorb anything.
Would it be possible, so, I mean, you're talking about the public works and engineering staff, and I'm sure it applies across the board with the whole city, but all these other groups, if we asked them to do what Audrey just suggested about the focus on the communication side, how can we, like, we could have a task force just on the communication and education about it that could run, I mean, we'd have them communicate with BPAC, so that would not add to your meetings, and yet it would still have that connection, and we could have strong movement, and really, it'd be more of a ground-up thing rather than a council telling us. It'd be the community building it, but we'd want the council's support. So I don't know what the section 2 here would say, but where we could do it where it wouldn't, we wouldn't be saying, and let me try to clarify. If you start talking to a driver's ed teacher about teaching and moving on this Vision Zero effort, they are going to say, we need more bike parking, or we don't have enough staff people, right? These are the sort of constant issues, and we just say, okay, but this conversation is about the communication and the education, and we try to hone in on that. I think that then you wouldn't have to staff that additional conversation, and we could still have the movement, as given the resources that we have.
I know that Nancy brought up, I believe, at the last meeting, having a communications committee for the website, for example. So we have already talked about having a communications committee formed.
Yeah, that's like a 3-person subcommittee of our group that would make recommendations for the website. Do you think 3 people of our group could come up with a Vision Zero strategy and plan?
Well, there's tons of templates out there, let me tell you.
Well, that's kind of what I was leading
And
to.
that's
That's why I was
why
trying to suggest
I
maybe we
have
don't
looked at
need
quite a few.
the school district and park district and public health district and get 20 people in a room and have to support that with staff to take minutes and publicize meetings to come up with a Vision Zero strategy and plan that we have templates out there for. Now, to get
But
buy-in from the community, it's
Yeah.
going to involve all those groups. So once you have the strategy and plan, it would be very important to take that around to all these groups and get feedback, at least once you have the draft of it, and get feedback from them.
And
I guess the question is, what's the minimum size group we can utilize to come up with a good strategy and plan
Why
draft?
can't we get the urban planning department to help us do that with grad students? I mean, sorry, Annie, I want to hear what you're saying.
I was just going to say, yeah, I really strongly believe at this point in the game right now, all of us in this room are the experts on Vision Zero in this city. Other people aren't going to know what it is. I think bringing a bunch of people into a room and saying, hey, we want Vision Zero, and then being like, I don't know. But I think if we bring to the room a really nice slide deck and just say, this is what Vision Zero is, this is the direction we would like to go, this is what we're interested in, and really just start building, like the again, it's the communication strategy, because that is a lot of what Vision Zero is it's a lot of just communicating, this is who we are and what we want as a community. I sort of think that would be pretty darn helpful, at least just get us started and get us moving in that direction. I know we are going to need the city support, and I mean that we are the city, all of us here are, but we are going to need, the city staff to support this. It can't just be like, oh, there's a commission that has a great idea. I mean, it does have to be, the city does have to say, I want to be, we want us to be Vision Zero, and we're moving towards that. But anyway, that's.
Well, I would be in favor of having a smaller group work on a communications plan and strategy, but not a Vision Zero strategy and plan. That I am not comfortable with. But I would be comfortable with saying that we will initiate a committee that will develop a communication strategy and plan for Vision Zero. Because
Can you explain again what that is? I'm a little lost in communication strategy and plan.
it would be a strategy to communicate what Vision Zero is, what the benefits are, why we're interested in pursuing it. It would be an informative. It would be to inform the public and the other entities in the community about what it is, why we think it's important, and why we want to develop a plan. Because the development of the plan, it is critical that we have all of that input to develop the plan. I can't participate in developing a plan and take it out and say, give us feedback on it. I'm not comfortable with that approach. But I would be comfortable with developing a strategy and a plan for communicating about Vision Zero with the public, with the goal of our adopting, a plan. Does that make sense?
Something like this here. The communication group would
Yes.
put together something like this.
Yes.
And then we start
Yes.
shopping this around, and then that gets us to create a plan with all those other.
This is what
stakeholders.
Charlotte did. They developed a communication strategy, and they had that, and they had a task force kickoff, and that's when they started looking at drafting a plan. So I'm saying let's do the first step, develop a communication strategy.
I'd like to just mention the Vision Zero requirements. You don't have to have your plan. You don't have to have your
Right.
strategy and plan. You only have to have an intention to have one, in a
Exactly.
specified period.
Yep.
However, you do have to have the mayoral support proclamation and the plan to make the plan.
Okay, so
You do
maybe
have
we
to
need
have
to
it,
re-
yeah.
Maybe we need to replace section 2 then with a different request to
Yes, I
ask
think
for
we could do
support of the
that.
mayor and council to, and maybe ask the mayor and council to direct BPAC to develop a communication strategy and plan to communicate the.
That works.
I would go so far as to say Vision Zero is communication. I mean, that it's a framework to communicate that this community is serious about driving. I mean, and that's really what it is. So we don't have a Vision Zero without communication, and once we start communication, we do. It's really not that complicated. We have many, as we've said, we have many agencies, lots of expertise is already going for that. We just don't have that framework to communicate to the public. These are not disparate efforts. The police here, the engineering there, education there. We're going to be able to put this under a framework that this entire community is united behind this vision. And, it's not disparate elements. We have the elements already. It's just putting them together and leveraging them with communication, which is what it is.
So I'm excited about doing the communication. I'm excited about that as a group. But I don't think we can do it just at BPAC. We have to have input to our communication strategy
Oh, sure.
in order to have the conversation grow, because otherwise it'll just be like, oh, that's just our thing.
Yeah.
And we want it to be wide. And I think that we can get a master's student to do this as a capstone, to help with the developing the strategy for communicating in order to get this to be a high priority for the next set of council goals, make this a community movement. I don't
So
want
you're
it to just be
thinking
BPAC.
Still
I want it
have
to
the
be-
Vision Zero subcommittee work on this, but try to get a master's student to do more of the actual, hate to say grunt work, but the grunt work in actually, putting it together. And then if that subcommittee wants to involve other, talk to the school district, park district, and everybody to see what they'd be comfortable with, what they feel their role should be in that, and how they could contribute.
How they could communicate.
You don't need to have somebody from that organization come to every meeting, that sort of thing. Maybe as a guest at some of your meetings or something, say, how can you contribute? Would you buy into this? What would make this more attractive for your organization? I don't know.
I
That's a thought.
would look to a student in communications to help us with the communications plan. I think they are the people with the expertise to help us with that part of it. But I think we should engage public health. This is a public health issue, and they have a lot of expertise in communicating with the public on health issues. And so I think that we might be able to, and I had talked to them about this when I met with them a few weeks ago, And so I think that they would be interested in being involved.
Even the library has a pretty good graphics artist in communications.
If they have
people.
channels of communication
Yeah.
that we can utilize, that would be fantastic. I mean, my ultimate goal is that by taking the initiative and taking leadership, we get some funding for media, for the necessary media and communications. IDOT has given Chicago Vision Zero funding because they are a Vision Zero. You know, they have established that they are. Mhm.
Yeah, so I guess I would like to ask, let's start with section 1. And is everyone comfortable with that? Are we comfortable with the date? Given the fact that we don't actually have a plan, do we feel that we can achieve that in the number of years we have left in front of us?
Are we required to have a date?
Yes, I think that it does require a date. I
If Charlotte
personally
can do
would.
it, then we can do it.
Well, if you look at our statistics, we've had many, many zero fatality years, and we've had as low as 21
But we have serious injuries, we have fatalities
Yeah.
and serious injuries. 0.
Right, it has to be, so it's really that serious injuries, getting that down as well.
I would feel more comfortable moving that to 2040.
I would move it the other way. I would say we've been there, we can get there with the
Well,
technology
we
that's
haven't been there with
available
serious
today.
injuries.
Yeah, but we have brought the serious injuries way down. I mean, I think with the, well, I shouldn't say that because the reporting had some issues in the early years. And it may have issues now. As I mentioned, it looks like we are much more serious about reporting serious injuries than, say, Charlotte. There's a huge disparity on a per capita basis.
What about other communities? Are they using a 20-year horizon, or are they being more aggressive than that? Do we know?
2030 is pretty common.
Common, a
Yeah.
20-year horizon?
So is 2050.
I think 2030's, you know, we just don't know. So
Right.
let's put it out there.
Okay. All right. And then in section 2, we would say the city council should direct the Urbana Bicycle and Pedestrian Commission to put together a task force to develop a Vision Zero communication strategy and plan. Is that what we feel?
I don't know.
Jeff, you have
Do
something to
you
say?
still want to call it a task force or just
Well-
a subcommittee?
Would we need city council to direct us to do that if we wanted to do it? I mean, if we wanted to create a task force, and we had volunteers to do it, I would assume we could just do it.
Okay.
It's a volunteer
Well, we have to
organization.
look at the inevitable use of staff time. Exactly,
Yeah,
you know, it's inevitable. I think
that
we
there
have
is
to
a
look at
question.
that.
It's not really in our charge in the ordinance to develop a Vision Zero policy because it involves more than bicycle pedestrian. So I think it would be better to get the mayor and city council to buy into it and ask us to specifically do it because we are familiar with a lot of the issues. I mean, they could ask traffic commission to do it, but there's only 3 people on traffic commission.
Right.
They got enough to do.
Yeah.
So
And I'm
while they
1/3.
don't need to do it, we want them to want us to do it and not just do it, you know, because if it's just us, then we're just playing our little game. But we want them to say, we're
Good
behind
point.
this.
One of the big questions, I think, on staff side is, so what does this mean? I mean, what, say for police, what does that mean when you have a vision? Are we talking increased enforcement? So then that's a staffing issue. That is a question, I think, that I'm going to suppose that the city council wants to know, or the city administrator is going to want to know. What does it mean for engineering? Are we looking at data collection? Are we looking at analysis? Are we looking at that if we have, I'm still trying to understand that. If we have a high crash location right now, we know that we start directing our efforts to fixing that. If we have Vision Zero, does that mean that we have to be more aggressive and in doing that, and then we have to have immediate type of funding to do that? That changes the dynamics of how we go about our business. So that, I think, when I get back to section 2, That's part of the question. What does it mean? You know, and how do we best get to 0 fatalities and reducing the serious injuries?
Craig, I guess I would say that, you know, in my mind, if we were to adopt a policy, that would allow us to kind of continue to move forward. But, you know, short term, it would give you, if there was an intersection that had a high crash rate, and you were to redesign it, and then there were folks that were to be concerned that, you know, traffic level of service for vehicles was going to decrease, but level of service for pedestrians and bikes was going to increase, that would give staff coverage to say, hey, we have a Vision Zero policy. We're going to redesign this to make it safer for pedestrians and bicyclists. But in my mind, it doesn't necessarily mean that the city has to go out and spend a bunch of money on redesigning a bunch of intersections. It just gives, you know, in the planning staff, when they do a zoning change or code change to make things higher density, you know, they can, you know, lean on that policy of the Vision Zero and say, this is a stated goal and policy that the city already has. Therefore, we're recommending to change, you know, policy X, Y, and Z. Or, you know, when you have those neighborhood meetings, there's a lot of upset neighbors. You know, you can say the city has a Vision Zero policy. This is consistent with that. This is why we're doing it. So I don't know necessarily that, in my mind, it wasn't going to require a bunch of staff time or, and, you know, like I said, you know, the plan, we can adopt a policy and then continue to work on a plan. And then the plan can be, you know, curtailed to whatever Urbana's staffing level is. And if we don't, in the plan, you know, make a bunch of recommendations that staff has to take on all this extra work, you know, the plan could be focused more on the policy side so that it doesn't impact staff as much, you know, immediately, but long-term, over time, all those incremental decisions that shape a city and make it, you know, how it, as it grows, can impact those decisions.
Just to add to that, you know, what Audrey said again was, by having this, we might be able to get more funding. Like, Urbana has submitted ITEP grants and then not gotten them, not received the funding, and obviously that. And so this is the kind of thing, having these plans and these commitments and these goals help get more money to be able to do the things that we need done. So, I mean, it's not going to be totally disconnected, though, because it has to, you have to be involved. But that's why I think if we do the conversations with staff on the development of it here, then it's not additional meetings on your overbooked schedule.
Right. It's just, we need to understand what it means. Just flat out.
We
You know,
have it.
and I understand what Jeff's saying, but I got to tell you, I've read a lot, and I'm not seeing entirely the bigger picture like that. What I'm seeing is a lot of people that get really upset with staff's not moving to getting things done. And that's what my concern is when I look at Vision Zero. I'm all for it. I'm just telling you that if it means that now we're going to vilify staff because they're not getting to 0 fatalities, you're not going to get buy-in. It's hard. I'm just telling you.
Well, I don't think we're going to vilify staff. I mean, we see case after case where it's driver inattention.
I understand, but it happens.
And we're trying to
often.
get those drivers' attention.
I understand.
Right
I understand.
now. I think it's quite the opposite.
We just need to understand what it means. Now, part of that would be then staff researching and trying to help develop this is what I'm getting at. So staff's part and parcel of this. And I'm just saying, right now, we don't have the bandwidth to do that.
I think Jeff's comment about giving cover is just really well taken. I mean, ultimately, we have to look at our city council. Will this help their reelection prospects, or will this hurt
I don't
it?
think most people care. I mean, most people haven't decided whether they're going to run again. It's not like we have career politicians on the city council, well, except for maybe one.
You know, and just to make a quick comment, if we have fatalities, we address those the best that we can, regardless of whether or not that means that we prioritize pedestrians over anything else. We look at what is the best solution to try to do that. That's what, under my leadership, that's what we're trying to do. We have, you know, the Lincoln in Ohio and Lincoln in Iowa situations. We have other locations that I'm concerned about too. you know, we try to address those. If it means that we slow traffic down, then we slow traffic down. If it means we don't handle the amount of volume, we don't handle the amount of volume.
I think that's Jeff's point,
Right.
is that it's not, you know, if we ask for a, you know, for us to create a communication communication plan, you know, that basically nobody's dictating how things need to be done.
Right.
And it can be, you know, you do the best you can, and in that framework, that you're going for zero.
Right.
Not tomorrow, but you're going for zero.
And we can actually, in our communication plan, we can celebrate all the things that you guys and the whole community, the LRTP, the CUATs, the CATs, you know, all of the work that's been done here, it's astounding. And there are so many people who don't know how much progress we've made. And I think the majority of our progress has been in the engineering component, the planning and the engineering. And we haven't done enough on the communicating, the talking to people, the education side of it.
The culture.
And so part of what I would expect is that this talks about all these great things that our city is doing, as what, you know, everything we can, everything you possibly can, you're doing. But it's not on the city's shoulders. It's on all of us as drivers, as bike riders, as walkers, to take personal responsibility and join the movement. We've got to make a difference, and that movement is what the communication plan is about. I think that, you know, we're not going to be able to get more than we're already getting from you guys. You're doing so much, and we know that. And especially one of the things you're doing is hearing us complain about the issues so that you can add them to your concerns. But this is, I think that that's part of the message, is that they shouldn't just be asking you for more from without, you know, maybe there's a tax to support it someday. Maybe there's a grant, right?
I would say that we're not communicating to staff or about staff. We're communicating to the public that we want, you know, we want them to be aware of the issue. And it's almost like kind of be careful out there to the community, to the drivers and the pedestrians. So I don't think it's at all, it's not really directed towards the city, it's directed towards the community, the communication.
And I'm not sure that's coming across in the whereases. I think I'd suggest adding a whereas that talks about communication with the community, the responsibility of all road users, something like that, and then changing section 2 to ask the city council and mayor to direct EPAC to come up with a communication strategy and plan. However we decide to do that, we'll decide, and we don't have to ask specifically for a task force unless it's going to cost a lot of money. Then we'll have to ask.
Now, I do want. You know, I don't think we want this whole Vision Zero thing to be about everybody being more careful, because it does require changes in how we plan infrastructure. But y'all are doing that. You know, it's not. You know, we know that. That's the whole bike plan. We don't. So it's not just, you know, everybody be more careful. That's a huge part of it.
And that's in there. That's in section 3. It
Yeah.
says-
Yeah,
So-
you know, to some degree, we've changed the infrastructure and we haven't changed the culture. And that's, you know, that's really part of the problem.
And that frustrates people. That's when people start getting frustrated and start complaining about everything, when they see changes and they don't know why it's happening, and they don't feel like they're part of it, and they don't understand that it's a systems change, and that's
the communication.
That's the communication. I think about my neighbors on my block and how they're just like, why hasn't this happened already? X, Y, Z, A, B, C, Annie. And I'm like, well, these things take time, you know, and it's communicating this stuff and it's talking to people. And so people right now just feel like nothing's being communicated to them and it should have all been taken care of by now. And I do think that's probably half of every problem you deal with at city is everyone just feels like it should have been taken care of by now. And that's just unfortunately part of the job. And it doesn't mean that you're ever going to be able to satisfy, I don't think, everybody.
So can I suggest that the committee take our conversation and work with it and come back with another resolution next month? Or the one after that? Whatever you're comfortable with, whenever you can get it done. Do you have enough feedback from us to work with that?
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Okay. Because, yeah, we have like a half hour left. I don't have a long presentation on complete streets, and it's not real organized, but I do want to kind of tell you what I know about that and show you on the computer. So I'll go back there. I think I logged out of the box portal too.
While you pull that up, can I just ask, who's on the subcommittee for Vision Zero?
It's me, Cynthia, and Audrey.
Okay. Well, I think you guys have done a great job here, and there's
Agreed.
I think this was a really, I really enjoyed this discussion, and I'm glad you're willing to come back again.
Yeah, and I'll say it again, I'm a communications specialist, so I'm very happy, and I'm a community communications specialist, so I'm more than happy to help draft plans and strategies and infographics and whatever other information we're going to need to get out there. And I keep going back to something Craig talked about before, was I really do want this Champaign County-wide. I don't want it when you cross the street over to Champaign, you're like, oh no. So I really do want this county-wide, and I think it'll really make Champaign County a unique place to be, and I just think it's very important that people have the language and skills to understand and talk about it. So.
Okay.
You can make that bigger if you'll click on the arrow on the side to get rid of the sidebar, Bill.
This,
Yeah.
how do you make
And
it?
then just,
pull
if
up?
you would increase it a little bit in size,
Isn't there
zoom
like a
in.
fit width or something?
You can just go up to the little magnifying glass, or, however, whatever you, zoom works.
Single page, zoom, fit width, that's what I want to think.
Ta-da!
So this was passed in 2011. This is our Vision Zero, or sorry. This was our Complete Streets Ordinance. And what made me look into this a little bit was when we were doing the application for Bicycle Gold Community, or Bicycle Friendly Community, and it was pointed out that we don't have a Complete Streets policy, we have a Complete Streets Ordinance. And so that's what was passed in 2011. So this was the background for that. And basically what it did was it added, and this brings up the goals at that time, said adopted Complete Streets policy. That was one of the city council and mayor goals in 2010. So what this did was suggest to make an amendment to the comprehensive plan that was adopted in 2005, I think. There. This little thing. How do I get rid of that?
I think it's 2000.
Yeah, so the comprehensive plan is basically the planning, the overall kind of strategic planning document for the city as far as infrastructure, zoning, things like that go. And so this Complete Streets Ordinance added a goal to the plan, Goal 47, and it's an official plan, so you have to amend it if you want to add anything to it. And the goal was to use Complete Streets concepts in constructing, maintaining roadways and public right-of-ways, so that's a goal. Then there was an implementation strategy in the plan to update appropriate documents such as Urbana's subdivision and land development code to reflect the Complete Streets policy. So that's what would actually give it some teeth. You put it in the subdivision code, then when people build houses, they have to follow it. The timing was near term. So that was 2011, and so far nothing's been done. So it's been 8 years, and this is our complete streets policy, as far as I can tell, is it's just an amendment to the comprehensive plan that sets a goal and a strategy that was never implemented. Is that your understanding, Cynthia? Okay.
Yes, I don't think that there was a systematic review of our subdivision and land development codes and adjustments made. I know the staff is looking at currently updating our zoning code and our comprehensive plan, so it's possible that during that process, this could just be part of what they do. And I see we have a planner here tonight who might be able to.
Yeah, when I did a search in the this is our subdivision land development code. It's 131 pages, and I did a search for bicycle, and it came up once.
Yes.
And pedestrians came up a little bit more than that, but
Yeah.
the one for bicycle came up in planned unit development because
And
a
staff
planned unit
has been.
development is something that the developers do if they want variances
Right.
and things like
Right.
that. And one of the incentives to allow the variances is to provide a bicycle circulation plan or something like that.
And staff has offered amendments here and there, but there hasn't been a systematic or a systemic analysis and revision.
So this was originally drafted just shortly after I was born, many, many, many years ago, and it was drafted primarily
Not the complete
from,
streets policy, we're
No,
referring to the land
no.
development code.
No, I'm not that young, but thanks. So this was drafted primarily when we didn't really have planning staff, and it was done by a collaboration of efforts. And it has been under staff review for the past, really ever since the late 90s to update it. There have been numerous meetings with developer groups, stakeholder groups, lots of work that has been done. You're actually probably going to see a Urbana subdivision land development code rewrite faster than you're going to see a comprehensive plan and zoning ordinance. Currently, when Marcus Ricci, another planner who works here, started at the city about 2.5 years ago, he inherited about 20 years worth of work that has been done on it and has not been passed and has not been finalized. It's a lot going on there. It has been, it's a case in Plan Commission right now, and it's been continued for the past couple months because there's a lot there. But there has been a couple of initial conversations with Plan Commission, and it's something that, like I said, it's already got its date and time for Plan Commission. I think it's later in October. And so that's something you're probably going to see. What I think looking forward for complete streets and trying to see that in the subdivision land use development is going to be something that there's a lot of other development things that are just fallen so behind that you're going to see a little bit touched upon that, and then you're going to see a lot more as far as like regular amendments and updates to that are less comprehensive and also something that is more manageable. It hasn't really been amended since, I think you can see it on the cover sheet of there, it's since the late 90s.
Well, one thing.
96?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I would, I can add in here, and I use what Champaign did as an example when I do presentations on complete streets. One thing that they did that I think it would be possible for us to do, and it wouldn't be an enormous heavy lift, like revising the entire code, land use development code, is they went through and developed cross sections for roads by type of road. And so for an industrial road, they have 2 or 3 options, and for a residential road, they have 2 or 3 options, and developers may choose which cross-section for a complete street that they would like to utilize in their development. And that sort of circumvented having to go through this whole review of everything we've got on the books and and gave this template that can be used with specifications, because it's pretty specific. So I think we could take what they did and take a look at it and see if that, if we could utilize that as a template for something that Urbana could do. Because one frustration I have is when new streets are built, our turning radiuses are still designed in such a way that people turn quickly, even at intersections where we have pedestrians crossing, quite a few pedestrians. And we know one of the things to do is to tighten those up. And I know there are lots of streets that we've gone back and tightened them. For example, Craig has proposed the redesign of the radius where we're looking at having people cross Lincoln. And the other issue that we have as well is we've got some IDOT roads that we don't have control over, and so that's something that we would also perhaps want to address somewhere when we're working on this, and say that it is our intention to work with IDOT to have them meet our complete street standards when they redo roads in our community. Not that that has any force, but it gives us the ability, I think, to negotiate with them, perhaps more, with a little more oomph behind it.
Yeah, Illinois, I mean, I think everybody pretty much has adopted some kind of goal of complete streets, and we are a member of CUOTS. They have a complete street goal, basically, but there's a document that, describes complete streets policy. Even in the ordinance they adopted in 2011, the Urbana ordinance, there's a lot of information about what complete streets are. I remember Gary Zico was chair of the commission, and he made a good presentation. So everybody kind of has bought into it. It just hasn't been formalized and put into the subdivision so that we actually can enforce it. So anytime we do redo a street, or the city builds our own streets, we're using complete streets methodology, and
To the best of our ability, yes.
Yeah, to the best of our ability.
In funding.
I guess.
But I think,
Oh, go ahead.
I mean, I'd just say, I'll bring up just a few specific examples where I've been a little frustrated in the past few years, because there hasn't been anything that we could point to and say, you have to do this. We've been pretty fortunate with the development at University in Lincoln. They dedicated the pathway to continue across Church Street there, and eventually, hopefully, the city right-of-way will connect there. The Kerr Avenue development, can't remember the name of that one, just off of Cunningham. Highland Green, yeah.
Highland Green.
That one, there's a bike path planned, or bike connection planned right along the saline, and I couldn't get anybody to do anything to make that connection. And it just seems like if we had stronger language in the subdivision code, land development code, you could force those issues a little bit more. And then the other one was actually the nursing home subdivision, when they did that, the one that, Annie likes the new sidewalks, but their sidewalks, they're narrow, and in
they're
our
90-degree turns. Whoop,
yeah,
whoop. Yeah.
and in our bike plan, and in the greenways and trails plans the park district bought into, the county bought into, everybody had passed these things, and it specifically says we want a multi-use path to connect to Weaver Park there along that drive. And they're building a sidewalk anyway. I was saying, well, why can't you spend another $50,000 and make it a multi-use path? But nobody wanted to spend the money, and I can understand that. But at some point, if we want that path there, I guess we'll have to apply for a grant when it costs $2 million in 5 years from now, instead of doing it when it would have been a lot cheaper. So those are the kind of things I've been frustrated by, and I'd like to encourage somehow the staff to get back to putting some teeth in it.
Giving you all the ability to require the implementation of the policy through the codes is what you're asking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to put that out there and get any comments or feedback, or correct any mistaken beliefs I have.
I had a question, but I think, Jeff, were you going to say something?
I was just going to kind of echo what Cynthia said, and I think you guys, do you have a manual of practice, or Marcus is drafting a manual of practice?
He is drafting a new manual of practice.
So that's where the city has incorporated a lot of the complete street policy, is that in those cross sections, since the manual of practice is administrative, we don't have to go to city council to tweak it. So then as kind of standards change or studies come out that show one method is safer than another method, we're able to administratively amend that part of the code, whereas a change to the actual municipal code or the regulations is a little bit harder because it's a much more rigorous process, and it's scrutinized. I mean, it's all scrutinized, but it just gets questioned a lot more. So the administrative part of it allows staff a little more flexibility to negotiate some of those things that you're talking about, Bill, with trail crossings and other parts that may be outside of a subdivision. So that's where it gets difficult, is when a development is proposed and you want this trail connection that may be outside of the subdivision, but it connects to a nearby subdivision. Some of those administrative things in the manual of practice allow us to get some of those things that the code may just say you have to provide sidewalks, trails, and streetlights or whatever, whereas the manual of practice gets into the nitty-gritty about the details of how that looks. So that's where Marcus can try to incorporate those things and keep it moving forward for new developments.
Yeah, and I just want to add two quick notes, is that I think what we're going to be doing is that there's like huge chunks that need to be updated because they're just so old. So right now that has to be immediately addressed, and then we can come back and we can really get into more of the details. And the quick thing too, as just a quick update, City Council right now has, it's right now currently tabled for Committee of the Whole, but some updates to the zoning ordinance that were called out explicitly in the Urbana Bike Master Plan. So that some of those things are being addressed, but they're being addressed at the time that we have to do them.
Okay.
So my question was just, of the big chunks, are any of them related to bike and pedestrian safety?
I'd have to ask Marcus for the specifics. I really would. It's a really big document.
Yeah, is that something that maybe he could give you that and you could bring it to the next meeting? Just what are the changes that are in the works for this fall for the subdivision ordinance, whatever it's called, that long name of the thing that's really old.
So I certainly can't promise his time, but I can definitely bring that to his supervisor and Marcus and see if they can find a time and let Craig know when they can get on, if they can. Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, I will say that redoing zoning ordinances and subdivision regulations is extraordinarily messy and painful and time-consuming. And so I think looking at the manual of practice is a good way for us to address some of the concerns that you are expressing.
I think some of it, though, is more financial. How do you get developers to pay for it?
Right.
And that won't help with the manual of practice won't help that.
It does in Champaign. They are able to have the developers do things that requires code changes.
Okay. I'm thinking, like, for stormwater, you require a certain amount of detention, and if they, and I don't know, in Urbana, it doesn't really work this way, but in some cities, if they can't provide that, then they can instead pay into a fund. And the city uses that fund to do the stormwater detention. So if you could develop something like that for complete streets, where if somebody refuses to make the trail connection, or they can't get the property because the neighboring property owner won't sell, then instead they can contribute to a fund or something like that. Some creative ideas to, to at least, I don't know, have a little bit better chances of getting the plans implemented. Okay, that's all I have. So I guess we'll get back to the agenda. Okay, so new business. There's no new business. Any announcements?
Yes. If you guys have not filled out the Universities League of American Bicyclists survey, we would really appreciate you doing that. And to the community at large, please fill out the survey. It's on bike.illinois.edu. It's promoted on social media, and it's in order to support the University of Illinois being recognized as a bicycle-friendly university, or renewal of that recognition. Thanks.
I would like to ask the members of BPAC to volunteer and participate in Walk and Roll to School Day, which is October 2nd. We have a number of schools participating and some events planned, and I sent out invitations to city council members and the mayor today. The mayor is going to join one of the schools, and in terms of our communications, I think that communicating to the community the importance of them watching for children and obeying the speed limits and school zones, yielding to pedestrians and crosswalks. Those are all things that we can emphasize and help bring public awareness to through this event. So I invite everyone to participate. You can I can send you a link for volunteering. You can pick a school if you were able to do that. And if you're not, you can cheer us on and share information on social media.
Yeah. So did somebody send out a link to the RPC safety report that they have like a 30-day public comment period?
RPC did.
Yeah, why don't you, if you have that, can you put it up on the screen?
And you'll have to write this down as ccrpc.org/documents.
You should say that into the microphone.
Oh, sorry. Okay. ccrpc.org/documents/champaign-urbana-safety-plan. Okay, so.
So it's called the Champaign-Urbana Safety Plan?
Well, that is the name of the link. It's
Okay.
actually the Champaign-Urbana Urbanized Area Safety Plan. They have a separate one for the rural areas. And if anybody's interested in that, that'd be great. I've looked at the urban one pretty extensively. I'm popping this up just to make you aware of what I didn't understand at first. This is not going with the LRTP. The boundaries are not the same. In black, you see the LRTP boundaries, the LRTP report card, and so on. That's the long-range transportation plan. This urbanized area, as we mentioned earlier, it's been added to Champaign-Urbana and now includes about 100 square miles, I'd say, of really what I consider rural area, all the way down to Tolono, Bonneville. Savoy, I'm willing to grant, is urbanized, but there's a lot of that isn't. So the statistics are not necessarily going to be the same as what you expect to see from the LRTP. And
The urbanized area is the dark black line.
that's the LRTP boundary. Do you want to explain it, Cynthia? Maybe you can explain it a little bit.
What the legend says is that the black line is the 2010 urbanized area, and the lighter gray is the LRTP 2040 metropolitan planning area.
And the safety plan is for the 2040 metropolitan planning area?
I haven't looked at the boundaries for that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's this much larger area.
Okay.
So does that mean the LRTP has now expanded its reach? Okay, that's very problematic for zeroing in on issues, in particular to Urbana, because it's a whole lot of area that's outside Urbana, and it kind of emphasizes why we need an Urbana Vision Zero plan. But just to give you a quick idea of the safety plan, there was one put out in 2015 as well for the county, and I looked at it at the time, and I haven't refreshed my memory on that. So it's not referenced in this safety plan, but there's some useful information in the plan about crashes, trends, and so on. They do focus in on pedestrians, severe injuries, And they have projections as well. And they have goals, which I've mentioned several times, is something like 20% reduction, which Urbana by itself can achieve by becoming Vision Zero for the whole metropolitan urbanized area. So it's kind of an interesting read, but one of the things here is the high priority intersections. On page 29, it's got signalized intersections, and it's the unsignalized, which Craig just mentioned earlier, is the table for unsignalized lists all the intersections, and there's 7. It's on page 30, if anybody wants to look at it, where Lincoln and Ohio, Lincoln and Iowa are particularly notable for the entire area in the number of crashes, the number of severe injury crashes. They have 8 of the 12 or something total crashes for the area. No, it's more than that, 2, 4, 6, 8. They have 8 of 18. Yeah, for the whole area, and that includes Boardwalk and Interstate Drive, McKinley and Paula Drive, Neal and Arcadia, Lincoln and Kettering Park Drive, so we got another one on Lincoln Avenue, Ray Street and Florida Avenue is another one, but they have just a tremendous number of A crashes, and then not the fatal so much, it's more the serious injuries and the total crashes. So there's some interesting analysis, but then when you get to the pedestrian analysis, this is where I have some problem with it, is because the emphasis really tends to be on what are the characteristics of the pedestrian, which doesn't give us as much to go on as far as what the driver was doing. On every other kind of injury, they'll talk about what the driver was doing, what's the status of the driver. For the pedestrians, it's suddenly how many were male, how many were female, as if they're the driver, and they didn't have room to put in the driver. Well, interestingly enough, that's how IDOT puts out its statistics, so it was natural to kind of follow that. But I talked to the stats guy at the pedestrian meeting, and he said they do have that information. As you would imagine, as we said earlier, they have to have the driver information as well, not just the pedestrian. And so they haven't been putting that out, and that can be requested. And I think that that's a comment people might want to make, is that maybe that information as to what the driver characteristics are could be added to the pedestrian and the bicycle injuries. And they also, there is a state safety plan as well that we've mentioned. There's one for 2017 was the last one. And that one has a nice matrix of contributing factors that tells you, well, for pedestrians it was failure to yield was the number one reason, whereas here what you see is for pedestrians it was crossing with the signal. So it's focusing on what the pedestrian is doing. And so anybody who just wants to spend some time with some depressing statistics, this report is there. They are looking for comments on it. It's open for review until October 15th.
Okay,
I believe is the deadline.
Okay. And I think you should be able to find that on the CCRPC site if you look for urban area safety plan.
It's been posted on social media pretty extensively,
Okay.
and so I think if you Google CU Urban Safety Plan, I think you might pull it up.
Any other announcements?
Oh, yeah, I have one. Light the Night,
Oh, yeah.
October 3rd, 4 to 7, at Illinois and Lincoln for Urbana, and then over at the alma mater
The ALMA,
at Race
that's
and Green.
correct.
Or Wright and Green.
And they are looking for volunteers to help install those. And anybody you have to bring your bike, and we have to install the lights on your bike. So please bring your bike if you want lights. If you don't bring your bike, you're not going to get them. It's open to the community at large, so anyone can come and bring their bikes and get a set of lights. Now, it is first come, first serve. It's 4 to 7, and so if you show up at 6:45 and we've run out of lights, you won't get any. So if you want to make sure you got lights, come early.
And an important reason for Light the Night, an important reason is that everyone needs to know you are legally required to have a light on your bicycle if you're riding in the dark. Folks here know that, but we
A
want
front
everyone
light.
to know that. A front white light and
Yes.
a rear reflector? Or is
At
it
least a rear
light?
reflector,
At least
yes.
a rear reflector.
You can substitute a light for the reflector.
Some of those tickets we saw were for not having a light.
Mm-hmm.
You can get a moving violation on your license if you ride a bike in the dark without a light. Get a light.
Any other announcements?
Thank you, Craig.
Okay, great. Seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Future topics. Okay, we have 3 minutes for future topics.
Kara, I'm wondering if Kara could present on the strategic plan for the Urbana Park District, maybe a general overview, and then specifically how it applies to bike and pedestrian and other people.
And I would just like to have a very short report on bike share. I was disappointed to hear that we did not raise the number of bikes that bike share companies can have in the community when the contract was renewed. And my understanding is now that 400 of the 500 bikes in the fleet are electric assist. And
I thought we did raise it.
my
We
understanding
did not raise it.
that it was not.
Because there
And-
was a second company that was thinking of coming. They have not signed the concession agreement, so I don't know if they're coming or not. The U of I, we don't know if they're coming. Sorry, go ahead. I could do that at the next meeting. That would be great. Can someone remind me so that I actually do it?
We clearly have some confusion.
Sure.
Okay.
Is anybody pressing to present at the next meeting? I can tell you A and B is still under review. C, we can't commit. Kevin, he's swamped. Craig is swamped for D. But hey, E, F, and G, and then we have an H, which is Kara's already been volunteered. And then, can you do?
Yeah, I can present.
Okay.
I just spent the last 2 years of my life writing that strategic plan, so I may as well talk about it.
So we have strategic plan, and then we have the bike share by Morgan. Anybody else? Oh, yeah, Vision Zero subcommittee.
Is it appropriate and acceptable for me to bring the general manager of VO Ride? Oh, absolutely. I will ask him.
By asking this now, it helps me and Bill, because me and Bill are always right at the end, and Tamara, trying to figure it out for the next agenda. So we've got 3. We try to keep it to 3 to 4. Sounds good. Good, okay. Perfect, thank you.
Okay, now, no
So
further business?
strategic plan, Vision.
This meeting's adjourned, thanks.